In the middle of a packed courtroom, a K-9 dog suddenly snapped, barking, growling, and lunging at the judge's bench. Chaos erupted. But when officers looked beneath the platform, jaws dropped. What the dog had sensed wasn't just strange, it was deadly, and his instinct may have saved dozens of lives. The courtroom hummed with low voices and the shuffle of papers as attorneys prepared their arguments. The high-profile fraud trial had drawn a crowd of journalists and curious onlookers, filling every polished wooden bench. Bright morning light filtered through tall windows, glinting off the brass fixtures and the American flag hanging behind the judge's chair. Officer Daniel stood near the entrance, one hand resting lightly on the leash of his K-9 partner, Max. The German shepherd sat alert at his side, dark eyes scanning every movement. To most people, Max looked calm. Just another highly trained dog brought in as a precaution. Daniels knew better. Max never really rested. Even when he sat still, his ears flicked constantly, always listening for the faintest sign of trouble. His training had saved lives more than once, though today, Daniels was sure it would be an uneventful shift. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Whitaker stepped up to the bench, adjusting his robes as he settled into the high-back chair. He glanced over the docket, unaware that anything was amiss. A few rows back, spectators whispered about the case, oblivious to the dog watching every corner of the room. Daniels gave Max's leash a reassuring tug. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "Just another day." At that moment, Max lifted his head and drew in a slow, deliberate breath, nostrils flaring. Daniels frowned. He'd seen that look before, but he couldn't imagine what danger could possibly be hidden here. Testimony began with the prosecutor's calm, measured voice echoing through the chamber. Papers rustled as jurors followed along, pens scratching notes in the margins. From his place near the door, Officer Daniels tried to focus on the witness stand, but something tugged at the edge of his awareness. Max had stopped scanning the room. He stood perfectly still, head lifted, ears rigid. A low vibration of tension traveled down the leash into Daniel's palm. "Easy," Daniels whispered. Again, though his own voice sounded less certain this time. Max sniffed once, twice, and let out a soft, anxious whine. His muscles bunched under his glossy coat, ready to move. Daniel shifted his weight, trying to see what the dog had caught. Across the aisle, a few spectators began to notice. They leaned away, exchanging worried looks. Max had never sounded like this over nothing. Judge Whitaker paused mid-sentence, glancing up from his notes. "Is there a problem?" he asked, voice touched with annoyance. Daniels cleared his throat. "Not sure yet, Your Honor." But before he could say anything else, Max barked sharp and loud. The sound bounced off the pan-lead walls, freezing every person in the room. It wasn't an aggressive bark. It was an alert, a warning. Daniels felt his pulse hammer in his neck. He tightened his grip on the leash, his heart sinking as he realized Max wasn't going to settle down this time. The courtroom erupted into murmurs and shifting seats as Max lunged forward, his powerful body straining against the leash. Officer. Daniels braced himself, feet sliding on the polished floor as he tried to hold the dog back. Max, heel, he ordered. But the command had no effect. Max's bark boomed through the chamber, echoing off the high ceiling. Papers fluttered to the ground as the jurors flinched. The bailiff stepped forward, hand raised in caution. Officer, control your animal. Judge Whitaker snapped, his gavel banging down with a sharp crack that only seemed to make Max more frantic. Daniels tried to pivot, but Max surged again, dragging him toward the bench. His nails scrabbled against the floor as he shoved his nose into the dark space beneath the judge's platform, barking with raw desperation. Spectators rose from their seats, a few stumbling toward the exit. A woman clutched her handbag to her chest, her face drained of color. Everyone remain seated, the bailiff shouted, though his own voice wavered. Max's entire body quivered with urgency. He scratched at the wooden paneling, his claws gouging shallow grooves into the polished surface. Daniels dropped to one knee, trying to calm him with a steady hand on his flank, but Max's gaze stayed locked on the shadows under the bench. His tail was stiff, ears pinned flat. Something was there. Daniels looked up, meeting the judge's bewildered stare. Sir, he said, voice strained, I think you should step back. Whitaker hesitated, confusion wearing with indignation. Then, seeing the unrelenting focus in Max's eyes, he slowly rose, backing away from the bench. The courtroom fell silent. The only sound Max's ragged breathing, and the low, throaty growl rising in his chest. Daniel swallowed hard as he followed Max's line of sight. The dog's nose was pressed so tightly against the dark gap under the judge's bench that his breath fogged the wood. Every instinct in Daniel screamed that this was no ordinary alert. Carefully he reached down and unlatched the small access panel near the base of the platform. The hinges creaked as he pulled it open, revealing a hollow cavity that ran the width of the bench. Max went still, head tilted slightly as he stared into the shadows. Daniels leaned closer, heart hammering in his throat. There, wedged between two support beams, was a small rectangular package wrapped in black electrical tape. A tangle of wires snaked out from one side, leading to a tiny blinking red light. He felt the blood drain from his face. Bomb, he whispered hoarsely. Gasps rippled through the courtroom like a gust of wind. A juror let out a strangled sob. The judge stood frozen beside the witness stand, his eyes wide in horror. Daniels raised his voice, steady but urgent. Everyone, evacuate, now. People began to move in a rush, shoes scuffing against the floor, chairs scraping back. Max backed away from the cavity, but his gaze never left the device. The bailiff grabbed the judge's arm, guiding him quickly toward the door. Daniels clipped Max's leash to his belt, his hand trembling as he radioed. The bomb squad. Unit 32 confirmed. Explosive device in courtroom. Immediate response required. The courtroom transformed into chaos as people rushed for the exits. Papers flew from the clerk's desk and drifted across the floor like startled birds. The judge disappeared into the secure hallway. Behind the bench, flanked by deputies, with tense, white, knuckled grips on their sidearms, Daniels held Max close, his hand fisted in the harness as they moved swiftly to clear the last row of spectators. The German shepherd kept glancing back, ears pinned flat, his gaze fixed on the hidden bomb. "Keep moving," Daniels urged, guiding a young paralegal who was frozen in shock. He pressed her gently toward the door, then turned to scan the room one final time, to be sure no one was left behind. Outside, the wind bit at his face as the last of the crowd stumbled down the courthouse steps, wrapped in blankets, handed out by paramedics. Blue and red lights flashed across the brick facade, painting everything in frantic color. Within minutes, the bomb squad's armored truck rolled into place. Officers clad in heavy protective gear filed inside, their movements practiced and grim. Daniels crouched beside Max at the edge of the police perimeter, one hand resting on the dog's tense shoulders. Through the open doorway he saw the lead technician kneel beside the bench and gently lift the device from its hiding place. Even from a distance, Daniels could see the tiny screen on the timer. Only minutes remained. He tightened his hold on Max, whispering, "You did good, boy. You saved them all." The bomb squad worked with ruthless precision, isolating the device and carrying it to their containment unit as the crowd watched in breathless silence. When the all-clear finally crackled over the radio, a collective exhale rose from the line of officers and evacuees. Huddled in the cold, Judge Whitaker stepped forward, his robe flapping in the wind. His face was pale but composed as he approached Officer Daniels and the dog sitting loyally by his side. "Officer," he began, voice and Max, "thank you. There are no words." Daniels gave a tired nod, resting his palm on Max's broad head. "He wouldn't let it go, sir. He knew before any of us did." The judge crouched down carefully, meeting the dog's steady gaze. For a long moment he simply rested his hand against Max's fur. Reporters snapped photos as the judge straightened, clearing his throat. "I'll be recommending Max for the Medal of Valor," he announced today. "He saved every life in that room." Max didn't understand the words, but when Daniels looked into his amber eyes, he knew the dog felt it. The relief, the pride, the love that only a true partner could inspire.